The best two teams in the country are playing for a national title. UConn taking on Purdue. These have been the best two teams all year long. This is the matchup everybody wanted to see, and we're finally going to get it. I'm going to deep dive this game. I'll give you a best bet at the end. Remember, we cashed on NC State team total under as my best bet of the semifinals. Easy cash under 68.5 points, never got close. We also cashed on Grant Nelson's over half a three-pointer made. He made one on the second possession of the game. Make sure to follow my website for all my breakdowns. Subscribe to this channel if you like this content. Check out our full podcast, Sports Talk episodes each week. And let's get into this deep dive here. And it's going to be a phenomenal matchup. The Boilers come in 34-4, 17-3 in the Big Ten, won the Big Ten regular season title outright. They did lose in the semifinals of the Big Ten tournament to Wisconsin. So that's the lone kind of blemish as of late. But they've rolled through this tournament. Not only did they win all 5 games, but they covered all 5 games. In fact, the only one that was remotely close was the Tennessee game in the Elite Eight. They won that 72-66. Every other game has been by double digits. And they've won by an average margin of 19.6 points per game in this tournament. In fact, it's really been one of the better runs we've seen in recent history. It's just been overshadowed by what UConn has done, and rightfully so, because it's been historic. They're up to 11 consecutive tournament wins and 11 consecutive tournament covers. We've never seen a run like this in modern history of college basketball. We may never see something like this again. It's been incredible to watch. The last time they didn't cover a game this season was back in the Big East semifinals against St. John's, where they won the game but failed to cover as 9.5-point favorites. On the season, 36-3, 18-2 in the Big East, won the regular season Big East championship, won the Big East tournament championship, two things they did not do in last year's championship run. They're a perfect 12-0 on a neutral floor this season. All 3 losses came in true road games. They lost at Seton Hall, at Kansas, and at Creighton. However, only one of those games was UConn at full strength, and that was at Creighton late in the season. The game at Seton Hall, they led early. Clingan went down with an injury late in the first half. At the time, UConn was up by 8. Game turns at that point. UConn ends up losing 75-60. The other game they lost was early in the year at Kansas, one of the toughest places to play in the country. Back when Kansas was playing some really good basketball, UConn also did not have Stephon Castle available in that one. So they really have one loss at full strength with the team that they have now. And they've just been pretty much a juggernaut, just like last year. So what's the blueprint then for Purdue? And is there one, right? And I do think there is. And I think it's going to take a really special performance from a really good team. And I think Purdue is a really good team, and they are capable of pulling off a performance like that. I don't know that they will, but I think it's possible. So looking at the UConn Huskies on the year, like we mentioned, they had 3 losses all year on their resume. Like I said, one of those games came against Seton Hall. It was their first conference game. They're up 8 late in the first half. Donovan Clingan gets injured. He doesn't come back in. They lose the game by 15. I'm going to throw that one out. Now, I am going to keep the Kansas one in there for sake of argument, even though Castle didn't play in that one. So we're going to look at 2 losses. And I am aware Castle didn't play in the Kansas game. The 2 losses that UConn had came against Kansas and Creighton, both in true road environments. Kansas was early in the year, non-conference. Creighton, obviously, conference game. That was later in the year, the second time they played the Blue Jays after beating them at home by 14. So, looking at those 2 matchups, I tried to find some commonalities. And the number one thing that is apparent, that's obvious, is Kansas and Creighton both had kids who were 7'1" or taller, right? Kansas had Hunter Dickinson. Creighton has Ryan Kalkbrenner. So why is that important specifically to beat UConn? Well, having a guy that's that big allows you to essentially play Donovan Clingan straight up without having to double, without having to dig down. That makes it really, really easy for the guards. Not easy. It makes it way easier for the guards of whatever team UConn is playing to guard them from the perimeter. UConn's guards are already phenomenal enough. They're the best guards in the country as a whole, that group. If you're having to double Clingan, And now you're at a disadvantage on the perimeter for guys getting open threes on ball movement or for attacking the basket. I mean, UConn will kill you in any of those ways. They're phenomenal getting to the rim. They're fifth in assist percentage on the year. So they're going to find the open guy and they're going to exploit whatever weakness you have if you have to double, if you have to dig. But if you're playing clingan with an undersized guy, you just have to do something or he's going to kill you inside. So that's number one. And if you look at those games, in the games against those big guys, clingan was a much bigger non-factor. And although I think he's a great player, and I think he's the best rim protector in college basketball, he's not nearly as dominant offensively. And that usually happens when he's playing against a bigger and or more physical guy, right? When he's playing against the guy with the big height advantage and he's stronger and bigger than the guy, it's over. It's barbecue chicken, as Shaquille O'Neal would say. But when he's playing against a guy of his same caliber and same height, which Zach Edey is, right, then you can negate him because he's a great guy as a roller in the pick and roll because he's so big and strong with athleticism. You can lob it up to him on the roll if he's there. If you take away the lob, he'll turn and seal you, or they'll kick it out and they'll dump it right into him for deep post position. Really hard to guard the pick and roll that way. Not going to have that advantage against Edey. They didn't have the advantage against Kalkbrenner or Dickinson. And because of that, now you have a guy who's not the best one-on-one back-to-the-back basket post player in terms of skills, playing in the post one-on-one. And that's what we saw in those two games. Clingan in the losses to Kansas and Creighton averaged 9 points per game and 6 rebounds in the two games. Way lower than he's done on the season, than his average on the season. Significantly lower than his average on the tournament where he's been so dominant. He was 9 of 16 in those games, which is still really good, but on the tournament, he's 66% from the floor, right? So, he downgrade percentage-wise. In those games combined, he shot 1 free throw. He's averaging 3.5 free throw attempts in the tournament. So he's really a non-factor, relatively speaking, from the offensive end of the floor. And that allowed the rest of the team to play UConn's guards straight up without being at a disadvantage. And what we saw in both of those games is UConn struggled to shoot the three ball, right? Didn't have to guard clingan with a double with the dig. UConn didn't get as easy looks from the outside. They struggled to make threes. That gave Kansas and Creighton a shot. Didn't mean they were fully 100% going to win, but it gave them a shot. Even the first game that they played against Creighton, clingan had 6 points and 5 rebounds. He didn't do much of anything. So this isn't just like I'm picking these two games where clingan played poorly and it happened to be against tall guys. Creighton both times, he did not play well, right? Even San Diego State, the lone big physical post man he played, and Jared Ledee's significantly undersized, but he's super strong. In that game, clingan, 8 points, 8 rebounds. And Ledee killed him. Ledee had 15 in the first half, right? Just ran out of gas and didn't have much help. So I do think that's important. So that's step one, right? Have a big man who can negate clingan and maybe win the battle inside. And I do think Edey's going to have to win that battle significantly for Purdue to have a chance. Step two, okay? Both of the games I mentioned, Kansas and Creighton, in those losses by UConn, the opponent shot 50% or better from three. Kansas was 9 of 14. Creighton went 14 of 28, which is bonkers. On the season, who has the best three-point percentage in the country? Purdue. Actually, it's dropped to second here after last game. But 40.6% from beyond the arc, top 2 in the country. And they have a ton of guys who can fill it up from outside. They've got 4 guys who shoot at 42% or better from beyond the arc. 5 guys who shoot at 36% or better. When they get Kaufman, Wren out, and they go with the 4 spacing shooters and Edey inside, it's incredibly difficult to guard because every single guy can catch and shoot, and a couple of those guys can get off the dribble and shoot like Braden Smith. Again, not saying there was ever really a doubt that they were going to lose to Alabama, but Purdue is similar to Alabama in the sense they have a ton of different guys who can space the floor and shoot it. And we saw that give UConn trouble. Their defense looked human for the first time all tournament, really in the last 2 tournaments, right? They were not tied with any other team with 10 minutes to go in the game in this run. It was tied. And yes, they ended up winning by 15, but the game was closer than the score indicated at the end. They looked human in that game. I was shocked it was tied with 10 minutes to go, as bad as Alabama's defense was, because their offense was able to spread the floor and shoot it and make threes. So That's step 2. Step 1, we got the big men. We talked about that. Step 2, got to be able to knock down threes. I think they probably need to shoot it in the 43 to 44% plus range to have a legitimate shot in this one. 40% would be, you'd have to have a lot of other things go right still. You got to shoot it above your average. They're capable of doing it. Number 3, slow-paced game. I do think this is very, very important, but kind of for a different reason that we've already talked about. So both of UConn's losses this year in those 2 games came in games that were low-possession games. The Creighton game, there was 59 possessions. The Kansas game, there was 60. Why? Well, higher variance game when you have lower possessions, right? Each possession's more valuable, and it's a smaller sample size, and the worst team has a better shot to win in a higher variance game, right? So we already talked about the pace of this game. It's probably going to be in that range, in the mid to low 60s, right? It's going to be somewhere in the low to high 60s, right? 62 to 69 probably. Now, how then do you make this game shorter and advantageous if you're Purdue? Well, number 1, you have to win the battle on the boards. You have to get multiple offensive rebounds and give yourself second chances where there's longer possessions. That's going to make less possessions in the game. Not allow UConn to get extra possessions. Again, that's going to give you the ball back and shorten their possessions. And number 3, you have to win the turnover battle. And I don't even think they have to actually win it in terms of like having less than UConn. I think for Purdue, winning the turnover battle means have less than 10. If you can limit it to lower than double digits, if you can have single-digit turnovers, you are going to have a shot in this game. You look at the 2 losses once again, right? Kansas and Creighton. What do they have in those 2 games? Kansas turned it over 8 times. Creighton turned it over 7, right? UConn didn't turn the ball over in their losses because they don't turn the ball over very often at all. But what they don't do is turn you over. So if you don't make dumb mistakes and you take care of the ball the way Kansas did, the way Creighton did the second time they played, you will have a shot. Okay? So again, now we're at limit turnovers, make threes at a high clip, 44% or better, and Edey's got to win that battle inside significantly against Clingan. The last thing that I think is important to give yourself a really good shot is you got to make the Huskies play isolation basketball. And the thing that makes UConn so dangerous to explode at any moment and to go off and to just go on these runs like against Alabama where they're tied with 10 minutes to go and they win by 15 is the fact that they have so many legitimate offensive players. Even though I kind of talked down about Clingan a little bit, he's still a pretty darn good offensive player. And then you have Tristan Newton, Cam Spencer, Alex Caravan, Stephon Castle, even Diarra off the bench is dangerous. But they're dangerous because they can all fill it up, they can all score, and they all share the ball and take good shots. They're a very unselfish group. They are 5th in the country in assist percentage. They assist on nearly 64% of all made field goals. Again, we're going to look back at those 2 losses again. And what happened in those 2 games? Well, the game against Kansas, what did UConn have? 9 assists on 23 made field goals. That is 39% assist rate. In that game, Tristan Newton went for 30, but a large majority of those were unassisted buckets. And even though he got going, they didn't move the ball to their other guys. Other guys didn't get going. Cam Spencer and Alex Caravan combined for just 16 points that game on 27% shooting. They never got going, did not play well. They lose the game. Against Creighton, it was even worse. And that game, they lost by 20 points. Against the Blue Jays, UConn had how many? 8 assists on 26 made field goals, 30.8% assist rate, right? 35% lower than their season average. It was almost the exact thing that happened at Kansas. Tristan Newton went for 28, but the rest of the guards had really, really poor nights. Cam Spencer went 3 for 8. Stephon Castle 3 for 9. Alex Caravan 2 for 7. They were a combined 1 for 8 from 3, and none of them scored more than 10 points. So, if you can make them play one-on-one ball, one guy's going to have it, gets going early, fine. UConn's too talented. You're not going to hold them all down, right? One of those guys is going to have a really good night. Have a feeling it's going to be Tristan Newton because I'm not really sure I've ever seen him have 3 subpar games in a row, and he's coming off back-to-back subpar games. Regardless, they're going to have somebody get going. What you can't do is let that ball start moving, let everybody get in rhythm, and now it doesn't matter who touches the ball. They're going to get a good shot every time. They're going to attack your weaknesses, and they're going to find a rhythm and get going. Okay? That's number 4. So again, real quick to sum up. Step 1, you need a big man to be able to negate Clingan, right? Purdue's got Edey. Check number 1. We got that one. Edey's got to win the matchup against Clingan by a significant margin. I would say he needs to go for 25 and 15, and he needs to hold Clingan to no more than 14 and 10. If he can do that, that would be a pretty decent-sized win. It's a lot to ask for, but it's possible, and I think they have a shot to do it. Step 2, you have to be extremely efficient from 3, right? Took 50%, both those losses, for the opponent to beat UConn. Now, given Creighton did beat them by 20, so if Creighton had shot 40% from 3 that game, they probably won, but they also had a lot of things go right for them. I think for Purdue to have a shot in this game, you cannot shoot sub 40%. To have any chance, it's got to be 40. I think legitimately 44, 45 gives you a real shot here. Number 3, play a slow-paced game, limit possessions, and specifically, you must have less than 10 turnovers. You cannot have double-digit turnovers. That will kill you. Braden Smith, you got to take care of the ball. And number 4, you force UConn to play isolation basketball. You do not let them have a high assist percentage. When the ball gets moving and it's not sticking, they're impossible to guard. Now, I'll say, if they can do the top 3, make threes, Edey wins the matchup, limit turnovers, I would say they have a legitimate shot even if they don't do the 4th. If they do all 4, they will win the game. They absolutely will. But that, in my opinion, is the blueprint to beating UConn. Way easier said than done. It's going to be the biggest challenge of Matt Painter's career, of Zach Edey's career, of Braden Smith's career. They're going to be tested like they haven't been in this tournament. But so is UConn. UConn has not played a team this good in this tournament, right? The best team I believe that they've played and beaten is Illinois. And they smoked them, but that game was close early, right? We saw UConn start to look human against Alabama in stretches. What happens in a championship setting when it's win or go home and you're playing a team that maybe is in your realm for the first time all year long? Now, in terms of my pick for this game, I think we're going to see a phenomenal game. I don't think we're going to see the game play out like Alabama UConn did, where UConn runs away with it and wins by 15, even though they're tied late. I anticipate this being tied late and coming down to the last 2 possessions. I really, really do. I think Purdue is good enough to hang with them. Braden Smith plays bad. Lance Jones has an off night. Could they get killed? Sure. UConn's good enough to beat anybody by 20. But I just think Purdue does have paths to victory, and I'm not sure I felt that with any other team. I've said it all year. I thought UConn was the best team. I thought Purdue was the second best team, and I thought the only team who had a shot to beat Purdue, or to beat UConn, was Purdue. And I still believe that. With all that said, and even though I picked Purdue in my bracket, I picked a UConn-Purdue final, and I have Purdue winning, I cannot pick against UConn. UConn is just too incredibly good. This is the best team I've ever seen in college basketball. It's the best 2-year run I've ever seen, and I refuse to pick against them in the championship game. I'm going to probably be pulling for Purdue a little bit because I kind of want to see – I want to at least see a good game. I don't want to see a blowout. I don't think we're going to see a blowout, but I just don't see the Huskies losing this one. They just don't feel pressure. You never see them get tight. You never see them, ever look like they're afraid. They play with a chip on their shoulder. Dan Hurley is a phenomenal coach. They have the best staff in the business. The coaching edge in this one is pretty big for UConn. It's a pretty big mismatch. So I like UConn to win it. My best bet. There's nothing I love in this game. The way I love that NC State team total under in the semis, that was a breeze. I do have a small future on Tristan Newton plus 550 to win the most outstanding player. He wasn't great in the semis. He finished with 12 points and 9 assists. If he's the best player on the floor for UConn and they win, he'll probably still win it because he had good enough numbers, but it's kind of still up for grabs. If Clingan has a great game, he's definitely going to win it, but I don't see that happening with Edey. The thing I'm going to look to for this best bet is I think we're going to go back to the well with a team total under, but we're actually going to look at Purdue here. Purdue's team total right now is sitting at 70.5. We broke this down earlier. This game is going to be played at a slow pace. I think a slower pace also benefits Purdue because they really want to shorten the game and have more possessions. And I think that UConn's half-court defense is something that Purdue has not seen all season long, right? You think about the teams they've played, the one team that they went over this total on that was a good defense that I've seen was Tennessee. And it took a lot of fouls, a lot of calls that we didn't see get called in the semis, right? Edey shot 2 free throws in the semis, so we're not going to see a ton of foul calls in this game, I don't think, the way Edey is accustomed to getting. In which case, I don't think if Purdue doesn't get to the free throw line, I don't think they can get to 70.5. I think this game is going to be played in the 60s. I think we're going to see something like a 65, 66 to 62 UConn win. If I had gun to my head to pick a side, it's just so hard to fade UConn, knowing how easily they cover at the end of the games. I mean, even that Alabama game, laying that many points and finding a way to cover. So I guess gun to my head, I guess I would take UConn. Maybe UConn in the first half, because I think that even though UConn sometimes doesn't turn it on until the second half, I don't think Matt Painter is going to have as good of a game plan as Dan Hurley. But I'm going to say my official best bet, we're going to go with Purdue's team total under 70.5. And that will be our locked-in best bet for the Final Four national title. And that's all I've got here, guys. Looking forward to a fantastic game. It was a heck of a season, and it's coming to a close tonight as the UConn Huskies or the Purdue Boilermakers are going to be crowned national champs. We'll have to wait all the way until November of next year for our next college basketball game. We do got the NBA playoffs coming up. Again, if you like this content, please subscribe to my channel. Check out my website. Follow me on social media. We appreciate all the support. Drop a comment below. It helps us get more views. Drop a like, hit that thumbs up, and let us know in the comments who you like in this game, what you're betting. Tell me that you like this video, that I suck, anything. Anything helps us get more views, so we'll take positive or negative feedback. But thank you guys again for joining us. Enjoy the national title, and I will catch you guys next time.